You know that feeling when the month is almost over and you're staring at your bank account like it's a cryptic puzzle you're never going to solve? You've got bills, maybe a credit card statement sitting there, judging you silently, a few unexpected expenses that somehow magically appeared, and somehow magically it's February again, and you're wondering, wait, where did all the money go? Yeah, that's me a few years ago. Every month felt like a tiny stressful balancing act. And honestly, I think a lot of us are living like that right now. But most of us don't stop to realize one brutal truth. The choices we make in our 40s, yes, your 40s, can pretty much decide whether the next few decades are comfortable or kind of quietly stressful forever. My name is David, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, human behavior, and why some people glide through life financially while others feel like they're constantly treading water. It's not just about income. It's not just about saving. It's about understanding patterns, how small decisions compound into decades of comfort or anxiety. And honestly, when you get it right, your 40s are kind of like the pivot point. You know, that invisible moment where the rest of your life either gets easier or at least less stressful, depending on how intentional you are. Now, I know it sounds dramatic, like I'm about to talk about some mythical financial secret, but here's the thing. It's really not magic. It's a combination of mindset, timing, and discipline. There's a shift that happens in your 40s that's subtle, almost imperceptible. One month, you're just trying to pay the bills, and the next, you realize the way you handled money, invested, saved, or ignored your finances for years. It's either working for you or against you. And this shift doesn't just affect your bank account. It affects stress levels, your relationships, even how you feel when you wake up on a Monday morning. So today, I want to walk through this idea with you, and not just in theory. I'm going to break down why your 40s matter so much, the mistakes people make without realizing it, and the steps you can start taking today to make sure the next decades feel less like financial survival and more like, well, breathing easy. Okay, so first, let's talk about why the 40s are so special. And no, it's not some arbitrary number pulled from a retirement spreadsheet. Think about it. By your 40s, most of your financial patterns are pretty set. You've probably got a career, maybe some kids, possibly a mortgage, or at least some debt that isn't going anywhere fast. The decisions you make now, how you handle your money, where you put your effort, what habits you double down on, will either compound into security or compound into stress. Here's a story. I knew a guy, let's call him Mark. Mark spent his 20s and 30s kind of coasting. He wasn't reckless, but he also didn't have much of a plan. He'd save a little here and there, invest a tiny bit, but mostly he was living in the moment. Sound familiar? In his early 40s, he suddenly realized he didn't have the cushion he thought he had. That small meh attitude toward finances had snowballed into a mountain of stress. Contrast that with Sarah. Sarah also didn't have a huge income in her 20s, but she started paying attention. Small investments, little lifestyle sacrifices, just a few consistent habits. By her 40s, she wasn't rich, but she had choices. She could take a risk if she wanted, buy a house without worrying about it, or even switch careers without the same kind of financial panic. The difference wasn't luck. It was compounding behavior. So here's the first takeaway. The 40s are basically the crossroads. You can keep winging it, or you can start steering consciously. And yes, it's a little terrifying when you realize it, but also empowering. Because if you start now, even if you're late to the game, you can still turn things around. Let's talk about compounding. I know, it's a word that sounds boring, like something a math teacher would yell at you in high school. But here's the truth. Compounding is basically life's secret weapon. And it works for money, stress, and habits alike. Think about it like planting a tree. In your 20s and 30s, you're tossing seeds around, maybe watering them inconsistently. Some grow, some don't. By your 40s, you've either got a forest or a bunch of saplings that never grew because you didn't nurture them. Here's a small example. Say you save $500 a month starting at 25. By the time you're 45, assuming modest growth, you could have around $180,000 just sitting there. Now imagine starting the same habit at 40. You'd have maybe $36,000 by 50. Not nothing, but the difference is huge. And the crazy part, most people aren't thinking in 20-year windows. We're thinking in, how much can I spend this month? It's not just money either. Habits compound emotionally and psychologically. If you're constantly stressed, never reviewing your finances, procrastinating, that habit grows roots. By the 40s, the stress becomes the default setting. On the flip side, Even small intentional actions, tracking expenses, automating savings, having conversations about money with your partner, compound into confidence, clarity, and control. Now, here's something nobody wants to admit. Lifestyle inflation is a sneaky thief. You get a raise, you buy a slightly nicer car, a bigger house, more vacations. And suddenly, your expenses have grown, but your financial security hasn't. I'll be honest, I fell into this trap too. I remember getting my first real raise and thinking, I deserve a little luxury, right? A fancy watch here, dinners out there. None of it was bad, but looking back, it was like pouring water into a bucket with a hole at the bottom. Your money comes in, your money goes out, and that hole. That's stress slowly creeping in. So here's the reality. The 40s are when lifestyle choices either support security or sabotage it. If you've inflated your lifestyle too much, it's a wake-up call. You can't keep pretending the budget will magically balance itself. The earlier you notice it, the better. Money isn't just money. By your 40s, health becomes a serious factor. Energy levels dip, recovery takes longer, and the cost of neglect, doctor visits, medications, mental stress starts to show. Financial comfort isn't just about wealth. It's about having the resources to maintain your health and quality of life. I've seen people in their 40s with decent income, but terrible health habits. Guess what? Financial stress spikes when health costs rise unexpectedly. On the flip side, investing in your health early, exercise, nutrition, preventive care, is like compounding interest for life quality. By the 40s, relying solely on a paycheck is risky. Life throws curveballs, job loss, economic downturns, family emergencies. People who've diversified income sources feel calmer, more secure, and capable of making choices rather than scrambling to survive. Think about it like this. Money is oxygen. The more sources you have, the less likely you are to suffocate if one gets cut off. Freelancing, investments, side businesses, even small ones, can create a buffer that transforms stress into options. Now here's a subtle but massive point. By your 40s, your brain is trained. Scarcity mindset or abundance mindset, whatever dominated your 20s and 30s, has roots. People stuck in scarcity see stress everywhere, even with decent resources. People who shift to seeing options and choices experience calmer, more deliberate decision making. This isn't fluff. Psychology affects how you spend, save, and invest. And in your 40s, small shifts in perspective can have exponential effects. By now, you might be thinking, okay, but what about the real emergencies? Yeah, life isn't neat. Accidents happen, jobs disappear, health scares emerge. The difference between stress and calm? Preparation. Emergency funds aren't glamorous, but they're the financial equivalent of a seatbelt. Insurance is boring, but it's a protective shield. By the 40s, if you haven't set these up, stress compounds. If you have, you sleep better at night. Simple as that. Finally, think beyond yourself. By your 40s, you start noticing the ripple effect your choices have on your family, children, and even community. The habits, mindset, and financial literacy you model now can create a ripple that lasts decades. This isn't about being perfect. It's about intentionality. Paying off debt, building savings, making smart investments. It doesn't just protect your future. It shapes the future of the people who matter most. So, if you've been listening, here's the big picture. Your 40s aren't a deadline. They're a pivot point. The choices you make now, how you handle money, lifestyle, health, mindset, and planning, aren't about perfection. They're about steering your life in a direction where stress doesn't dominate, where you have options, and where the decades ahead feel more like opportunity than survival. It's okay if you're starting late. It's okay if some mistakes were made. What matters is awareness, small consistent actions, and a shift from autopilot to deliberate choice. Imagine waking up at 50, looking at your finances and feeling calm, not because everything is perfect, but because you have control. That's the goal. That's what your 40s can buy you. Not just money, but freedom, security, and peace of mind. So start small. Start today. Track a dollar, take a walk for your health, open that investment account, or just reflect on your mindset. Every little step compounds, quietly building a future where you're not just surviving, you're thriving. And honestly, that's worth everything.